So welcome everybody to this meeting of the Housing Management Board. I'm conscious that personnel has changed, and this is the first meeting in the Sarah Spicer, post Sarah Spicer era. So we're in a slightly different world. But it'd be quite a good idea if we just ran round the screen in the order that I'm looking at people, and just so that we know who everybody is. I'll start. So I'm Alex Marsh. I am Professor of Public Policy at the University of Bristol, and I am the independent chair of this committee, and I have been for a number of years. I'm not quite sure which number, but I think it might be 3 or 4. Anyway, coming down, Nigel. Start. Nigel, are you with us?
Sorry?
I think.
Oh, sorry, just introduce yourself. Sorry.
Did you say my name?
I did.
All right. I'm trying to sort out these earphones. They're not working.
All right.
So while they were plugged into me, it's not working. I can't hear a damn thing. Sorry.
Oh, well,
Nigel Varley, tenant at Gilton House.
Fantastic. Right. Okay. Alison.
Hi, I'm Alison Napper, Asset Strategy Manager for Bristol City Council. Hi.
Thank you. Tom. Hey, Tom R.
Councillor Tom Renhard and the Cabinet Member for Housing, Living and Homes.
Thank you. And welcome to Tim.
So which Tim is that? Is that Tim De La Rue?
Tim De La Rue, yeah.
Yeah.
Tim, you're muted.
Yes, okay. This is the first time I've used Teams, so you'll have to bear with me. So yeah, Tim De La Rue. I don't know. I'm a leaseholder, but I don't really want to represent leaseholders. I want to represent all.
Okay, so I think you can, and you're an associate.
Sorry, Alex.
Liz. Yeah.
Sorry, Tim, you're here as an associate member on behalf of the scrutiny panel today.
Right. Thank you very much. So at
No
least
problem.
I understand why I'm here. So excellent. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you. Yes, good. Good. Welcome to Chris Evans.
Yeah.
And I think you're here in the same. You're here in the same capacity. Is that right?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You're in the capacity. Sorry. Say that again.
You joining us as an associate member of the board today, Liz?
I still can't catch what you're saying. Can you repeat?
Alex, I'm sorry. Yep. I'm not aware of Chris being an associate member. Certainly, he's certainly not representing scrutiny.
Okay. Okay. Chris.
Yes.
Are you joining us today simply as a member of the public, or?
No. I'm a leaseholder with the council, and for whatever reason I didn't log it. Somebody else gave me the link, so that's why I've joined in. But I'm here legitimately, albeit as a guest. But
okay.
It may have been otherwise, but yeah.
Can
I just add that this new system doesn't match the meeting on Skype. I mean, I'm finding it, much more difficult to communicate. There's a lack of visual contact and all the rest of it. So I think if it can be returned to Skype, that would be incredibly helpful to me and possibly others.
Okay, make a note of that. Perhaps one thing about Teams is when people switch their microphone on and off, you move around the screen. So I've got to try and keep track. So Pete Dawn.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Pete Daw. I'm a council tenant at Bristol in the Bristol North West constituency, the deputy chair of this board and member of the Homes and Communities Board, representing for, around the same time as Alex, actually, because it was me who suggested you be invited, Alex. Professor
Well, there we
Marsh.
go. Bit of history for everybody.
To have you. Thank you.
Donald.
Evening, everybody. I'm Donald Graham, Director of Housing and Landlord Services at Bristol City Council. Welcome.
Thanks, Donald. Philip.
Philip Morris, council tenant in Bedminster.
Thanks very much. Jamie.
Hi everyone, I'm Jamie Booth. I work for the asset management team with Ali Napper.
Thanks very much. Fiona?
Hi everyone, I'm Fiona Lester, Head of Housing and Estates.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Councillor Eddy?
Hi, I'm Richard Eddy, Councillor for Bishopsworth.
Thank you. Liz?
Oh, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, even. It's been a long day. I'm Liz Cheetham, I'm the engagement team leader. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Leisha?
Hello, everyone. Leisha Wilson, Policy and Engagement Manager, Bristol City Council.
Fantastic. Councillor Classic?
Hi, Councillor Sarah Classic, Hengrove and Whitchurch Park.
Thank you very much. Welcome again. Councillor Denyer?
Hi everyone, I'm Councillor for Clifton Down, which is the area around White Ladies Road.
Thanks very much. Councillor Bales? I've gone to the people with cameras off now. Councillor Bales?
Hello, I'm Councillor Kerry Bales for Hartcliffe and Withywood Ward. I'm also a council tenant.
Thanks very much. Sibusiso?
Hi there, I'm a council tenant representative in Hotwell. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Sam Robinson?
Yeah, hello. Sorry, slow to get off mute. Sam Robinson, Energy and Renewables Manager, Housing and Landlord Services. Thanks.
Thanks very much. And then Matty?
Hiya, I'm Matty. I'm a journalist at the Bristol Cable.
And you've disappeared, but Adam?
Hi, I'm Adam Hustons, local democracy reporter, questioning life choices at this current time.
Gosh, right, okay. Thank you, everyone. I think that's everybody. As I say, people move around the screen as they come on and off, but I think that was everybody.
And it's
yourself,
also
Jeremy.
just me as well. Jeremy Livett from Democratic Services clerking the meeting.
Sorry, absolutely, thank you. Sorry, cheers. Right, I think that's all us for today. Welcome all. Jeremy, any apologies for today?
We've had an apology from Councillor Tony Dyer. He hoped to meet, but he's still ill and hasn't quite recovered from his illness. And I think I also had a note that Ross Dannimore had resigned.
Yes, he stepped down from the committee,
as well.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if you were going to mention that.
We'll take it
yeah,
at
a
that
little
point.
bit later on. Yeah.
No, we'll take that now and note our thanks to Ross, who's been a member of the committee for a good while. Thanks for his contribution to the committee. Item 2 is minutes of the previous meeting. So for those of you that were at the last meeting, just firstly take that as any comments on it as a matter of record. Philip.
Yeah. Are we going through page by page?
At this stage, yeah, but at this stage, just take comments on accuracy, please.
Oh, right. Oh, I'd like to make comments later on then.
Okay, so we're okay on I think it looks like we're okay for accuracy. So let's run through the actions. Can I just check before we get too far with this? Leisha, do you or Jeremy have whether Sarah had completed? Did she give you any information on the status of because what a lot of the actions are allocated to Sarah. So I don't know whether you've got any information on the state of play with any of those.
I'm afraid not,
Fine, okay.
Alex. I'll have to give an update by email.
Okay, well let's run through and see which ones we can pick up on that weren't allocated to Sarah or others can't fill in the gaps. So if we come on to the matters arising, I've got an action for Tom first, Tom Reynard, which relates to the I'm on page 8 of the last meeting's minutes. Maybe we can take that one as something which is a conversation between Tom and Pete Dole.
Yeah, I mean, just to say here for transparency that the boards are all currently in hiatus at the moment while we're waiting for the new One City staff to start. So,
okay,
Pete, update you outside of here once that's in progress.
Okay, so,
they've been appointed.
Absolutely right. Okay, so don't mute yourself, Tom, because you're next as well. Social value assessment mechanism. Sarah stated that since council, she would pursue the matter with him after the meeting. Do you have a recollection that this was pursued?
No. What is this specifically relating to? It's about Tom's and social value, but was there a specific point?
The point was that the council's framework uses the Tom's benchmark, right? Mm-hmm. And all of its bidding processes uses that. But is it Gorham Homes uses a different matrix to measure its social value. So then how can we par Gorham Homes and City Council's social value to say that what is being delivered, because they're using a different matrix. So can they actually be the same thing? That was the question.
So it was
this has been raised with Gorham, but I'll get you an update. Thanks
for that intervention, so prompting our memories. So to the bottom of that page, Alison, you had an action alongside Sarah with fire marshals and fire doors.
Sorry, Alex, I don't think I've got a copy of the minutes in front of me. Right, I don't know if it's possible to share them, is it?
I can tell you what that was. Fire doors and fire marshals. Sarah advised, given that you weren't available, she would take it out with you afterwards. An update would be brought to the next meeting. Fire doors and fire marshals. That's what we've got here, what the situation is.
What? Do you have any more about what the question was?
So she didn't just pick that with you then by the sound of it. So it was, if I remember correctly, it was to do with the way in which people were managing the doors or propping them open, I think, and some of those sorts of issues last time around, wasn't it? In the blocks, I think there was a conversation we had. Pete.
Yeah, so Alison, for the benefit of anyone who wasn't here, there was a wider discussion going on, obviously post Grenfell and post our own Twin Owl house in Easton, around whether or not blocks with walking watches were actually being, respectful to fire doors, or whether they were in fact in a number of cases propping them open, and whether the marshals who are doing the fire walks are actually taking action where they see them propped open and closing them, and reminding the residents of those balconies that it is not just their safety and not just their amenity, it is the lives of everyone within those blocks that they're impacting. And there's a wider conversation across the city about this, which I appreciate this is just the very tip of the iceberg of.
Sorry, I wasn't aware of that issue, but I can certainly pass it back to my colleague who's managing the Waking Watch contract. I do know that we're really clear with the Waking Watch fire marshals that they're there to patrol the block. They're not just there to look out for fires. They're there to ensure fire safety within the block as a whole. But what I can do is make sure that's reiterated through. We've got 2 companies currently, and I'll make sure that's reiterated through. It's not, I'll need to pass this to a colleague who manages the Waking Watch contract, but I'll do that.
But the conversation was, thanks Pete, the conversation was triggered by people giving examples of seeing the doors propped open, I think. So that was what happened last time around. So Nigel, did you want to come in on that point?
And can I just say as well, there's a newsletter being prepared for all residents of high-rise blocks, and the importance of clear corridors, the importance of fire doors and not propping them open, why they're there, they must be closed. That's all going to be reiterated in the newsletters that it's going out to.
Nigel, did you want to come in at that point? On that point? I can't, if so, I can't hear you. Nigel, you're muted.
Yeah. 3-4 years now on this kind of thing. I started to learn to switch on the Zoom, the mutes. Anyway, on our block, there's doors between the landing and the leads to the stairwell. And not only they're propped open, there's a magnet there to hold them open. It was the practice to open them during the day, and this magnet would hold them open. Now, I don't know why that was. If a fire broke out and came up through the stairwell, it's a way of smoke getting throughout the flat. So I think the council needs to look at this system. These doors are open automatically, and I think they did. and why have they got these magnets to hold them open? So if we're reviewing fire safety, that needs to be looked at. Just another thing on page 8, the point I made about when the cladding's removed, it gets freezing cold. It's July and it still is freezing cold in the flats because we've got no insulation. And we dread the winter, but that's something I want to raise later on to do with the management of the whole project, because the management doesn't seem to be going very well.
Okay, well, we'll hold that thought. I've got Philip and then Tim and then Councillor Denyer, I think. Philip?
Yes, good afternoon, good evening. Just to illustrate Nigel's point, the reason that magnet's there is to hold the door. In the event of the fire alarm going off, the magnet ceases and the door's closed. Well, they should go on door closers. But in Northfield House, which is a high-rise block where there is a fire watch near me, it's next to where I live, the doors are propped open because so many people have mobility scooters, not wheelchairs, mobility scooters. There's a big difference. And because they have to reach across the handlebars to open the door, it's near enough impossible. So they're propping the doors open with bits of wood and wedges, and the fire watch are sympathizing with them because they realize what a hard job it is to get out of the door. They're leaving the doors propped open. We had a residents meeting on Wednesday, and I raised the issue, and I was nearly thrown out of the block. People got very angry about it because of the fact that they cannot move freely on their scooters because they're keeping them A, on the landing, which is against council rules, or they're keeping them in their flats, which could be seen as a fire hazard. But anyway, that's what's happening in Northfield House. I can't speak for anywhere else. But the magnets hold the door open, and in the event of an alarm going off, they close, because ours close every Tuesday morning at 9:30 when the fire alarm is tested. Thank you.
Thanks, Philip. Tim, you want to come in on that one? And then I've got Councillor Denny, and then I've got Donald, I think.
Well, what I wanted actually was a suggestion regarding your fire watchers actually finding doors propped open. I was going to ask, is it possible for photographs to be taken of the door? What floor, what part of the block, leading to which flats, so you got some idea what's going on. I mean, what Phil's saying, you can obviously see the logic behind it, but it's really scary. People are parking them outside in the corridor or actually taking them inside their flats. I mean, these things are expensive, but they're also a ticking time bomb. So I was hoping for the possibility of something, something to sort of not necessarily prove, but show people are actually breaking the rules by, propping the doors open. I understand why they're propping the doors open, but then it's also my experience that people prop the doors open because they can't be bothered to open the door. So if that's possible, it was just a suggestion, that's all.
So let's hold on to that one. If I can see some people pick it out. So I'll take some more because I'm slightly conscious that this is set off a discussion on its own right. Donald and then Pete.
Yeah, I just want to reinforce it, regardless of the reason why people feel they've got to prop the doors open, they're breaking the integrity of the fire safety of the building. And we expect not just Waking Watch, but our housing officers, when they're doing their walkabouts, to make sure those doors are closed and to reinforce it, whatever the difficulties may or may not be for people on mobility scooters. And we're trying to roll out a program of cage storage for mobility scooters so they don't have to go into the flat. And they certainly should not be in the communal areas as well either, because that's a hazard for evacuation. And again, we expect housing officers and Waking Watch to enforce that.
Okay, so keep hold of that. Clearly this is on the agenda. Then I've got Peter, then Nigel again, and I think probably we ought to move on because we've got plenty to get through. No, Pete.
I'm sat here in a Rollator, a mobility device myself, having had 3 strokes, 2 heart attack, and a massive bilateral pulmonary embolism. So I empathise with people with mobility issues. I'm not wishing to detract from the issues of moving around a block. I used to live on the 13th floor in Corbett House in Barton Hill. I'm aware of how many doors you need to get to the ground floor exit. But let me remind everyone our worst fire in Twin Elm House was caused by and started by a lithium-ion battery in an electric bike. Councillor Renard will remember the conversation he and I had on the train with the Mayor of the City about that, in which I was asking for external storage for electric bikes and mobility scooters and charging, because it is not safe to bring lithium-ion devices into our homes. Let me repeat that. These batteries cause fires. Yes, they're useful in mobility devices, but they kill people. It's why you can't take one on a train, you can't take one on an aircraft, and I think we should be having a review as to whether or not you should be allowed to take one into a tower block. I would wish, I would request a fire officer visit to every single flat who puts a mobility scooter in their hallway, and have the fire brigade explain to them the consequences and the lives they are jeopardising, and the selfish, stupid, irreparable, irresponsible behaviour. Post Twinell, post Grenfell, there is no grounds. This is just selfish, stupid, and in breach of the tenancy. And with our head of housing on the call, I would ask we use warning letters in violation of tenancy for people who jeopardise the lives of other tenants with reckless, selfish, fire irresponsible behaviour. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to take Nigel. Have you got a brief comment? And Chris wants to come in. So Nigel.
Not a brief, just in response to that. So what you're suggesting, Peter, that we get rid of everybody who's got a mobility scooter on the landing, that they're evicted, because irrespective of the rules, there are people who, if they don't have access to their mobility scooter, are trapped in their flat. Now, the answer to this is one of them. But the answer to this is not punitive. It's for the council to accelerate its programme of providing charging facilities in each block, to make it as a matter of urgency, because I accept what you say, that lithium batteries are now the biggest fire risk that exists in social housing. Therefore, it must be a matter of absolute urgency and priority, with a fixed time scale that runs into weeks rather than years, to provide these facilities. You can quote the rules and threaten people all you like, but they'll still park their scooters there, because otherwise they're trapped, and things come to an end for them. So what I'd like now is some sort of commitment from Donald to say, right, we've got this program of installing charging facilities. What's the time scale? You provided a time scale for other things. There's things later on about CCTV. Where's the program? Where's the time scale for this? If it is the most serious risk to life that you say, and I accept all that what you say, but I don't think the punitive route, unless you're prepared to evict people with all the publicity that entails, who are disabled and rely on mobility scooters.
Okay, so I'm going to take a comment from Chris.
Alex, can I quick response?
I'm just slightly conscious of, can I just take Chris and then let Donald respond?
Yeah. Now I want to go over the history of it. I mean, first of all, I've had to report the council to the Ombudsman on this particular issue, and indeed another one, because I told the council 17 months ago of the dangers of lithium-ion battery scooters, bikes, whatever, in flats, and that they told me that it was, to quote, acceptable. Since then, we've had the death at Twinnell House, where the guy's bike caught fire. He got out the window, dropped about 16 floors and killed himself. Also here in Henbury, one of the blocks, everybody was turfed out at 3 o'clock in the morning because one woman with a mobility scooter had put it on a cushion to recharge it overnight. It caught fire. So everybody was turfed out of bed at 3 o'clock in the morning. Now, again, I made it very clear about the dangers, as the previous speaker underlined, and there was the usual sort of nebulous response. Now, I perfectly understand that people with mobility scooters need to do something with them. But my view is, and I know it's a difficult logistical one, is that people with mobility scooters should basically be on the ground floor or in bungalow accommodation or anything like that. The idea of putting generally fairly elderly people on the 5th, 10th, 15th floor of a block of flats with these things, and the other issue that links in with this is if there is a fire and if there are smoke-filled corridors, the idea of having dogs running about under these circumstances is again highly dangerous. I've warned the council on this for years now, and of course nobody wanted to listen as usual. So, you know, there's been the usual sort of blagging. And indeed in these two blocks here, 10 years ago, the council made these two blocks dog free. While that was the theory, it hasn't applied for one single day in the last decade. And there have been various harassments and attacks by dogs. And as I say, in the event of a fire, it's absolutely potentially lethal to have dogs who, you know, they're animals. You know, if they, especially if they've got handicapped owners or something, they're running about in smoke-filled corridors, you can work out the rest. Okay, I've said my bit. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, I'm going to suggest, Donald, if you like, I mean, clearly this is an issue of some complexity and strength of feeling, but Donald, if you'd like to respond now, and maybe this needs to be taken away.
Yeah, I just want
to
reinforce the fact that it's not a nebulous response from the council in relation to lithium batteries. We're fully aware of the dangers and hazards that they present, and we've done 3 things. One is, apart from the immediate reviews where the fire took place, we've had intensive discussions with Avon Fire Service. We came up with a communication strategy. We did it in public and we did it in writing about the dangers of lithium batteries and charging. And what that's why I've said earlier on, our programme of action is to create more storage, of which there's insufficient. That's totally correct. Across the blocks for people to store their mobility scooters. Then the challenge is to actually incentivize people to actually use them and feel that they're safe and secure in that environment. So that'll be a direct engagement. There's no question whatsoever of us seeking to evict anyone in any shape or form simply because they have a mobility scooter. That was just wouldn't even cross our minds. But we do want people to moderate their behaviour in the interest of themselves and of the whole block. So it's something we will work with residents through a resident engagement strategy. But the proof of the pudding is, it might have been Peter, it might have been Chris who said this, is we do need to have these cages rolled out in place. They are present in some blocks, but certainly not all, and that's something we need to do. And it may just create uncomfortable conversations and difficult conversations, but that is the safest way forward. And the idea of people bringing in e-scooters and charging them is a real hazard, and that is something we have to clamp down on.
Okay,
time scale for this. What's the time scale for these?
The time scales associated. We're doing a review of we have 62 tower blocks. We have a legal obligation to review the safety of each and every one of them, and that is an active programme now. We've set ourselves a time scale of just over 12 months to do them all. And we'll report back here as progress is being made, or if there's any impediments to progress, we'll obviously let you know that as well. And hopefully you'll be able to support us in our endeavours on the ground.
Okay, thank you for that. So there's a range of points been raised there that I think we've got in the minutes we'll keep hold of. So maybe there's some things to reflect on, but hearing more about the progress of that programme, I'm sure colleagues will be very interested in that. And Chris's point about how that interfaces with the issue around animals, I guess we keep hold of that as well as part of the safety issue. Okay.
Can I just interject there? As I said when I spoke, I raised this issue with the council 1 year and 5 months ago, and nobody wanted to know about it. Since then, we've had the tragedies. We really cannot go on. You know, if what I had said, and maybe others, I don't know, said in the first place had been heeded, we wouldn't be where we are now. And so, you know, this is about human life, you know, and it's just ridiculous. So everything gets sidelined until there's a crisis. and then everybody's sort of running around just like dogs will do in smoke-filled corridors. Anyway, I've said my bit. Thank you.
Well, I can't speak for what's happened in the past, but your point has been made here and it's been minuted, and in this forum that will be taken seriously. So, I mean, let's see how that develops. Can I just check, Jeremy, have we got the damp and mould report in this meeting? Are we expecting that?
It was. I had a note that there's going to be a presentation at the meeting.
Yep. Is that?
So I haven't been given.
Oh, you
so
do,
I'm assuming. Yeah, assuming someone else is
okay,
going to
right.
be doing
Okay, sorry. I wasn't sure if Craig or Laura were with us, but it's been right. Okay. Yeah. I'm very conscious that.
Yeah, no, it's.
I'm just very conscious we scoot through the minutes. Most of the rest of them are Sarah related or Alison Scott related, I think. I'm conscious of our time. Can I suggest we just take those and I talk to Jeremy and Alicia about an email update on the rest of those actions from last time around, because I'm conscious of our time, because we've got some significant items to deal with for the rest of this meeting. Okay.
Alex, I'm very happy for Alison Scott to email me personally about the Eastcote Estates for that minute. Yeah.
So we'll take that offline and update everybody on some of those things and see what the state of play is. Fine. Jeremy, public forum, do we have anything? I'm not aware of anything.
No, nothing received.
Nothing received on time. Thank you. Right. Okay. So that moves us on to so we've got 4 substantive items. The first of which is damp and mould, which is held over from last time around. So Alison, would you like to share that with us?
Hi, yeah, it's myself and my colleague Jamie who are here tonight. There is a report, it's not a slide deck, unfortunately. I hope that's okay. And apologies, it wasn't issued beforehand. Are there some hands up?
Not conscious, I don't think so, are there?
Oh, sorry, it's my screen playing up. Sorry, apologies. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, hang on, somebody. Yeah.
It's Leisha. Could you? Yeah, I was just going to ask if you can make the text a bit bigger, please. Thank you.
Yeah. Is that okay?
I think that looks good.
So, myself, Jamie, and I think it was Laura Pilkington, who's the service manager for responsive repairs, came along to Housing Management Board, not last time, but the time I think it was about January or February. So this is just an update on what we've been doing since then and where we are. So just a very quick background, the Housing Ombudsman did some work looking at how housing organisations deal with damp and mould, and they issued a report entitled Spotlight on Damp and Mould nearly 2 years ago, actually, October 21. And what was really important, the theme of the report was to move away from an attitude of essentially blaming residents for damp and mould and condensation and promoting a zero tolerance stance. And the report really helpfully made 26 recommendations for what it saw as really good practice in the damp and mould sphere. So we, Bristol City Council, reviewed our performance as a housing provider against each and every one of these recommendations, and we made an assessment about how we felt we were performing. Were we achieving best practice in some areas? And yes, we were. We were meeting many of the recommendations, but we recognised there's room for improvement, and there were 2 of the recommendations that we weren't meeting at all. So our sort of zero tolerance approach, which is what we're being encouraged to take from the Housing Ombudsman, means that damp and mould reports will be prioritised like all other health and safety issues. We'll make sure we provide easy and accessible ways to report damp and mould cases from residents who are experiencing it, and we'll respond quickly to each case on a case-by-case basis. Make sure that we take appropriate response for each of these cases, and make sure that we record the issues and the outcomes accurately. Something else that was really emphasised from the Ombudsman report was about follow-up cases. So don't wait for the tenant to tell us that the problems come back or it's not been solved, to make sure we follow it up and we support our residents through the issue. So I've just got a few pointers around the work that we've been doing and how we're doing now. One of the recommendations is that we have a clear and accessible policy on damp and mould with an equalities impact assessment, which we didn't have. We've now got a policy drafted, and I believe, Jamie, it's going to the tenant scrutiny panel on the 18th of July for tenant consultation on that. One of the issues that we've got around data and information on damp and condition of our properties, we've got an issue because through COVID, essentially through COVID, we pull back on our standard house condition inspections, and these are just surveyors who go into homes, not because the tenant has reported a problem, not because we think there's a problem, just to collect and collate information on our stock. They weren't emergencies, they weren't urgent visits, so we stopped doing them through COVID, and as a result, our data on the general condition of our homes isn't as good as we'd like. So we're really pleased that at the council's cabinet in June, they approved the money, and they made the decision that we can essentially catch up with the surveys that we haven't been able to do over the last couple of years. And we are going out to external surveyors, so a company of surveyors, and the aim is to survey 40% of our stock within a year. So we're working with our procurement colleagues currently to get the right firm of surveyors on board. We're very much hoping that the surveys will start in autumn, which is really important that we make sure we get in the homes when in the heating season, when there's more damp and mould cases. So 40% every year, with the option at the end of that year to, depending on the contractor performance, to undertake a further 40% in a second year. So obviously 80% of our stock would give us a really, really good picture. And I think that kind of sampling approach is really useful, particularly with blocks, where we know that if we survey a certain number of flats in a block, we'll get a really good picture of how that block is performing. So different orientations, different floor levels, and we'll get a picture of all the flats in the block. So that's really great news for us that we've been allowed the money and we've got approval to do this. So it's quite exciting. So that would really improve our data and information base, if you like, about our homes and how they're performing. All sorts of condition issues, but with a focus on finding damp and mould, assessing it and giving us the feedbacks to our surveyors in responsive repairs so we can deal with it. Intelligence. So I think something that the Ombudsman picked up was that authorities don't always know where their cases are and how to report on them. So we've made changes to our housing management system, and we've got much, much better intelligence on damp and mould. So it comes in from all different directions. It could be a surveyor who spots it, who's there for another reason, a housing officer, or indeed the tenant themselves that reports it. So we've got much, much better intelligence on the cases, but what that allows us to do is look for patterns or trends. And like I said, if there's a leak in a block, and one tenant has reported some issues of damp, it's like we can investigate it and see where else it's occurring, so we can look for those trends. So that's really good. When we do a house condition inspection, like I said, we want to do 40% of our stock over a year. We do something called a Housing Health and Safety Rating System assessment, HHSRS, which looks at all sorts of health and safety issues in the home. Damp and mould is one of those. It's also things like trips and falls, excess cold. It's kind of really the foundation of health and safety in the home. So if there's a banister missing and someone could fall in trips, so the steps outside, it looks at all the health and safety in the home. So we'll be, as well as doing the house condition inspection, we'll do the HHSRS assessment, and that'll give us some better data to analyse and really get a better picture of what's going on in our stock. Our advice pages on damp and mould, when we looked at it, we realised that they could be better. So the changes went live in May, and we've got much much better advice for our own social housing council tenants, but also for people living in private rented or owner occupiers, some really good general advice about damp and mould. So that's been done and that's updated. We've got a leaflet that's been designed. We've a leaflet's been drafted, we're getting it designed and produced. And it will go out with every new tenancy sign-up pack, and we'll make it available online and in our customer service points and sent out to residents when we're aware that there's an issue. So there's lots and lots and lots of information online with a one-page paper leaflet that will be given out to people, but there's a lot more detail online. So that's in train and in design. I mentioned the scrutiny panel on the 18th of July, and we're also taking the policy, the web page, the leaflets, etc., to residents through the service user groups to get their involvement and engagement, and they can feed into those sort of communication and advice channels. We've made improvements to our online reporting tool, because part of what we need to do is make sure that our residents can raise issues, and they've got lots of ways of raising issues to us, and we've got to make sure that we have that information that goes to the right place. So better online reporting, but also better training support for the customer service centre staff who take that first call, so that they know the right questions to ask, and they know exactly what to do with that service request that's been made. We work with Centre for Sustainable Energy, who are a nationwide organisation giving energy efficiency advice, but they are based in Bristol, and we pay them to specifically support our council tenants in Bristol. So they offer advice to everybody, and then we pay an amount, so it's targeted advice, and we can make referrals to them. So it's about damp and mould, but it's also about getting the most out of your heating system. Do people know how to use their heating system properly? And kind of beyond this piece of work, they also help people access warmer home grants and grant funding. They can help them if they've got fuel debt. So we think they provide a great service. So we pay them to kind of offer an improved and elevated service to our own council tenants, and they're producing some training material for our non-technical staff. So that's the housing officers, and potentially we could widen it out beyond housing staff, because of lots of city council officers going to people's homes, know what to look for, know the signs, and know what to do with that information as well, and how can you feed it back into the repair service. That's kind of for non-technical staff. Laura's on leave, and if she was here, she'd tell you that the training that she's rolling out to the surveyors who are dealing with it, and about that changing culture as well. So it's not just the technical training to this is what damp looks like, these are the types of sources and types of reasons for damp. It's also that cultural change that we don't say to the tenants, if only you opened your window, you wouldn't have damp. So it's kind of that technical training, what to look for, but also that cultural change which is needed, and the Ombudsman's been encouraging. It's a kind of internal issue really, but we're making sure that we use our housing management system better, I think, and make sure that when a response repair is raised and it's a tenant raises a service request, that we capture that and we manage it as a case. And like I said, we make sure that we capture all the communications and photos and everything to do with that case, and that will allow us to make sure that we go back to see if we've solved the problem and see if the problem's still there. Couple more points. Back cases and tasks will help us manage all the comms out on it for that case as well, which will be really good. And learning from the complaints, that was another point from the Ombudsman. If you're getting lots of complaints from people in a block or in a road or in a house type, make sure you learn from that. So we're recording our complaints around damp and mould differently to as we were, so that we can report on that information and analyse it. And then I think the final point is better use of technology for our surveyors. So we can use data loggers. We can put some technology in the home to see the temperature, the humidity, what's causing it, and use technology better to inform why the damp is there and what the solution would be. So I think, I think it's fair to say that we have responded well to this issue, because I think we were all quite concerned about the effects that damp and mould was having on people, and the Ombudsman's recommendations have been really, really helpful because it's informed our action plan. We've got an internal task force, and it's something where we need to change. Where I work in asset management, kind of data and strategy, we need to change that. We need to change how we deal with tenants, our repairs approach, the surveyors training. It's something that is having an impact all the way through the department, I think. So we've still got some way to go. We've still got lots of actions that we need to do. But in the last 6 months since we came to in January, good progress is being made, I think it's fair to say.
Thanks very much for that, Alison. So Philip has made a comment in the chat about an example that you may want to capture and reflect on.
Let me just check that out.
I've got 3 comments waiting. Philip, is your comment something? I got Philip, Councillor Eddy, and then Pete. So yeah. Philip, is that a different comment?
Well, it's just that Donald was there, and thanks to Donald, the surveyor went and looked at the job 2 days later, but no one's ever been back. And since then, he's had a kitchen replaced, and all they did was painted over the black mould. And the mould's back with the recent rain we've had. You can smell it when you go in the kitchen. They fitted an extractor, which is using electricity all the time. It only comes on when it's damp. According to the tenants, it's on 24 hours a day. So.
Philip, can I ask, is that in a particular flat in Berrycroft, or is that in the communal area?
Number 5, Berrycroft.
Okay, so we can pick that up and we can find out what we know about that already, and we can respond to that. Has the tenant raised that issue, do you know?
Well, like a lot of tenants, he's a bit younger than me, but he's not on the internet. He doesn't have a mobile phone. He said he was on the telephone paying for the call for an hour and a half the other day when the water was running down the wall. But he said he's been to the Temple of Doom and they won't let him in because you've got to report them online. Well, he's not online. So he's in a limbo.
Well, thanks for raising that. We can take that away and make sure that it's being dealt with.
Well, you'd know the address, and you've got his name on file, I'm sure, somewhere.
So it sounds like there's a specific case there, but it may also raise 1 or 2 more general points about how people in certain circumstances are able to interface with the system, if you see what I mean.
Well,
yeah.
I must just add, the surveyor said the whole external walkway needs digging up and relaying, but there's 5 flats on that walkway, and it's a fire escape. So are they going to do it? I doubt it.
Well, let's thank you for that, Philip. So there's an example there, something which people need to look into. Councillor Eddy, do you want to come in at that point?
Alison, I very much welcome the action point you highlight, of course. Naturally, next May Cabinet will cease to exist. I assume an update report will go to the relevant Housing Policy Committee, and HMB in over a year, will it?
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, I mean, we are more than happy to continue reporting, to come here every 6 months, go to wherever, go to scrutiny, more than happy actually, because we don't want to lose sight of this. We want to make sure that we keep on track with these actions and make the changes that we need to do. So yeah, we're more than happy to come to whatever meeting to give an update to whoever may be post-May.
Thank you. And I think Councillor Bales also made the comment about cultural change and the value of some of the actions that you put in train now. So, Pete, do you want to come in at that point?
Yes, thank you, Professor March. Firstly, I appreciate and I give thanks to all of the recommendations from the Ombudsman being followed. It's a great starting point of actions. I would ask if Jeremy could put the Centre for Sustainable Energies contact numbers and web address into the minutes. That would be helpful. Picking up on a question on one of the things that was said, the link between the housing management system, the asset management system, but also the allocation system. Are we capturing, are we flagging when we move either an adult or a child because of respiratory illness? And are we keeping that in check so that the housing officer can see it? There does at times seem to be a disjointed, I don't know, bifurcation between allocations and estate management, in that housing officers genuinely don't know who is coming onto their patch or indeed whether they have any additional needs. And there is a risk, I feel, that, well, as someone with a respiratory illness myself, it's not captured, and the understanding when a repair is reported isn't fully appreciated. So, for example, I reported a repair, it was a level 3 28-day target. It took over 10 months to enact. As Philip described, fans in my bathroom and my kitchen, which are damp sensitive, run 24/7. It's only the speed at which they're running that changes. Following a report of damp in my bathroom, contractors had to dig 4 foot of concrete out of my building in order to reach the point at which the damp hadn't progressed. So I am aware of how difficult some of these issues can be, and I'm just wondering whether, as we explore our new housing management computer and new software, whether these links between allocation, medical assessment, housing management and asset management could be joined up better. That's an open question I'll ask.
Thanks, Peter. Alison, do you come back?
That's a really good question. I don't know very much about the links between allocations and the estate management, but I think you make a really good point, and I think we need to, and we are actually transitioning to a new single system where the asset management and the housing management system will be one, and so that's something that we're moving towards with the go live towards the end of next year, because we recognise the importance, I think, of not just seeing the tenant and seeing that separately from what we know about the building. That said, the repair system is the same as the estate management system, so we all have access to knowing who's living in the home. I mean, I'm not sure when it comes to damp and mould what that link is about the allocation and the estate management system. I'm not sure what the answer is to that.
Okay. So we'll take that as an outstanding question for the moment. Alison, would it be possible to stop sharing your screen, by the way? Sorry, I've got
sorry.
no problem. I've got Nigel, and then I've got Councillor Denyer. Nigel, where are you? Over there.
I want to follow up a point that Philip made about communication, the problems that people have, reporting things if they're not online, and that must affect thousands of people in thousands of council tenants. Now, the last tenants meeting, it was a SUG. I tried to move a motion that we agreed to set up a working party on communication within the council, made up of officers and tenants, with a time scale of producing a report. And of course, it suffered the usual fate. All right, we'll take that on board, and taking it on board means the opposite of what it usually says. So again, I'm going to float this now, that communication is a huge issue. Something needs to be done about it. It needs to be a joint investigation by tenants and officers and councillors, and it's urgent, because all sorts of things are going wrong because of lack of communication. So I'll put that there now, and I expect the usual response of, oh, well, we'll take that on board and hope that it sinks.
Well, we'll take that. We'll No. We'll take that as an offer and a point made, and it will go into the minutes, and we'll think about actions, and we'll come back and see where we go. Councillor Denyer.
Yeah, mine was just simply, could we have a copy of that document so that we have it for our records like the other papers?
Yeah, Jeremy, I'll leave that to you to make sure that gets circulated. And Donald.
There is no question that it's really difficult to get through by telephone to housing. It's a daily problem, and I would just have to acknowledge that it's a very unsatisfactory situation far too often for residents. We've had people hanging on for 40 minutes and more trying to get through. We have offered more resources to the contact centre. We've also offered more training for them should they require it. But it is, I just have to acknowledge it's an issue that remains, and we haven't resolved it as yet, and it's a source of great dissatisfaction.
Okay. So I guess we I don't know who will see the minutes of this meeting, but we note that dissatisfaction was expressed in this arena as well, forcefully. Philip.
Oh yeah, sorry, hang on a minute, I'm off screen. I just got to get you back. Oh, what the hell's happened? I don't know. I just wondered. Anyway, I can't see. I don't know if you can see me or not.
We can.
What happened to the vision for moving forward together? A document which, if you can see me, I'm holding it in front of the camera.
Yeah. Okay.
That's 2 years ago. I never know how to pronounce her name. Ilona from the tenant participation unit sent me a copy of it, because this has changed from when I wasn't a member of the HMB when this was produced, but I was on a SUG and I saw it, and I just wonder what's happened to it, because it contains all the information that lady's just been through. But this was 2 years ago. Communication. Well, Nigel's always going on about it, and I don't think he goes on enough about it. Communication is a lost art with Bristol.
Okay, Philip. Yeah, so for those of you who are new to the committee, we certainly had updates about the Moving Forward Together programme on a number of occasions, but you're right to say that it hasn't featured on our agenda for a little while. Fiona, you had your hand up. Did you want to come in about that or move us?
Yeah, I was just going to say that, Philip, I will comment on Moving Forward Together. We can cover it towards the end if you'd like, because I just want to give an update on where we are at the moment. You're absolutely right, and I think we just need to keep residents informed. So I've got a bit of an update for you, which I've prepared, and I'll just talk on that later on if you like. Is that okay?
Yeah, fine. I'm trying to get back online, but I can't find you.
We can see you, Philip.
Oh well, yeah. You've got a good vision.
Yeah, we can see and hear you perfectly, even if you can't see us. Can I suggest we move on to our next item, given that Fiona's lined up for that one? So can I invite you to share your presentation, which is focusing on CCTV?
Okay, hello everyone. I do have a presentation. Just let me get ready to share for you. Bear with me.
I'm back.
Right. Okay.
For us, Philip, you were never gone.
You're a darling.
Okay, are we seeing this?
Yes, thank you.
Great, wonderful.
Philip is in here in 2 instances because he followed the link the second time. I wonder if someone could remove the other instance.
Thanks. Okay, that's much better. Can everyone hear me? Yes?
Yes.
Okay, I shall carry on. So I'm just going to give an update for you around our CCTV upgrade and where we are with it at the moment. I will take questions at the end, so because I can't see hands at the moment because I've got two screens up. So just to give you some background information. So we've been working in conjunction with the Operations Centre for Bristol, looking at how for the project to upgrade our CCTV across HRA land. So we have put aside 655,000 is the investment that we put aside for over a 2-year period for this project, with 327,000 that we expect to spend in 23-24 to support the works for the upgrade and the infrastructure and the cameras. Just for your awareness, we have around 473 cameras and equipment across housing sites across Bristol. I say approximately because that will be changing as we upgrade and improve our services. Shall I carry on? Philip's just coming back in. Okay, so I think just to be clear, we've got a number of cameras across the city that are obsolete and they're not supported or coming towards end of life. And one of the main issues that we have when we get a report of a camera not working is the infrastructure is the issue of why our cameras aren't working. So we've got cameras throughout the city, many of which have been there for a long period of time, and they are working on what we call an analog system. But as we all know, and quite linked to the conversation around Teams, we've moved more to a digital system, which means that we are struggling. So the front end camera isn't working, but it isn't the camera itself. It's about the infrastructure that sits behind that camera that needs to be improved and upgraded. And so that's a piece of work that the real focus is on, really. So to do that, we started by thinking about what are our priority sites. So there's been a piece of work where we've spoken to councillors, where we've linked in with PCCs, with our police and colleagues, where we've spoken to housing staff, and obviously from feedback from local residents to identify where our priorities are. Something else I wanted to just share with you is the Safer Streets initiative, which has been really brilliant for us in Bristol this year. So just to give you some background around Safer Streets, it's a Home Office initiative, 75 million for England and Wales between 22 and 24. That sum can vary when it's set up. So the funding relates to crime prevention plans in areas that are affected by high levels of neighbourhood crime, things like burglary, things that affect everyone every day. So the police and crime commissioners, PCCs, along with the local authorities, can submit bids identifying hotspot areas, and when they have those bids, then we can put some money in to see if we can get some support. So just for your awareness, there are 49 PCCs across England and Wales. So if you think about that, for us to be able to get some funding was a real success for Bristol. So we put in for funding, and we were shortlisted, and we got an award of 32,000, which we match funded. So with that money was used to upgrade our infrastructure. And as you heard me speak earlier on about the infrastructure, it's not just the cameras. So upgrade the infrastructure and the cameras at St Matthias House, which is in St Jude's, Middleford, Middlemead, Hayleys House in Hartcliffe. And we used the St Matthias site as a bit of a test site because it was a rather complex site because it had no cameras at all. So that was starting from the very beginning. So the Hartcliffe sites were the sites that were selected by the police and community development and housing, and those were linked directly to concerns around ASB, and it was clear that there would be benefits derived for communities if we had an improved camera in those areas. So the infrastructure works have been completed and the new cameras are in operation in these areas, which is a great success for us. So what's the progress? So what's the progress today? So far, there's an upgrade of CCTV recorders and the data storage. So what we found out is that the data for our CCTV is stored obviously in a storage unit, and that was nearing end of life. And obviously key for us. We need to be able to pull back that data to provide, you know, evidence for crime when necessary. So it was important for us to put money aside to improve the data storage capacity. So that has been completed. In addition, we've now got ongoing works in Lansdowne Court and Eccleston's House, and the works commenced there due to complete at the end of August. One of the things that we've done is we've spent some time identifying our priority blocks. And the aim is to complete the priority blocks in 2023-24. So I think I really wanted to spend some time just highlighting some of the challenges, and these are important challenges that I think it's only fair to share with you. So we have the biggest challenge is the challenge of coordinating the work that we're going to do. So through with our M&E teams, with the CCTV surveyors. Because to do the work, we need to get into the infrastructure of the building, and that means we need to get into the channeling and the ducts. And as some of you who may well live in our high-rise blocks, you recognise that all of the cabling are taken through the ducts of the buildings. And in order to mitigate risk for residents and minimise impact, what we've been trying to do is to coordinate the works. Obviously, it doesn't make, it's not good business sense, and it will affect residents if we go in 1 month to do one piece of work and then go back 6 months later to do a separate piece of work. And I'm sure residents here today will be able to say that is in the past something we haven't quite got right. So trying to coordinate that work is a bit of a challenge for us. In addition to that, what we've found is sometimes when we do go in to take a look at the ducting, what we're finding is other things that really delay the CCTV projects, things like asbestos and the need to remove that first before we can do any CCTV work. So those are real challenges for us, and those challenges may well cause us delays, and it's really important that we say that, because often we don't know until we start doing the work, as you can imagine. But our desire is to complete all of our priority 1 estates that we've identified within 23-24. So what are our opportunities? Obviously, the project provides the opportunity to enhance our CCTV offer, and that's something we've done on some of the works that we've done. I think on Eccleston, we've enhanced the work that we're doing there. So residents working with the housing officer pointed out that there were concerns around some of the corridors and the stairwell. So when we're doing work, we've been enhancing the offer, increasing cameras, relocating cameras and making sure that they're facing the right direction, because some of our cameras really weren't picking up the sort of key vulnerability areas. So I think it's a clear opportunity. So the point that I wanted to make, it's not simply about just going in and replacing old for new, especially if those cameras weren't located, and looking at points of real interest. So we are making sure that we're using that as an opportunity to try and get it right. And obviously the second thing that's a great opportunity of this work is around the improvement of the quality of the images. It's vastly improved, and therefore we found that colleagues, housing officers, police and others are able to make better use of the information that we're able to gather in those images, and it allows us to have better identification of perpetrators. And as I've already said, we now have a more secure and long-lasting storage system for our CCTV. So what are the next steps? So as I've said, the project commitment is to try and deliver everything that's in band 1 within 23-24, challenges permitting. So it's clear that I have to point out the challenges, some of which are not within my gift, they're within the gift of the whole project. So that's the next step. The desire is to deliver everything that's in band 1. And then the aim will be to move into the items that we've identified as being in band 2 and band 3. So I just wanted to share with you an update of what's been completed. So you've got a bit of a kind of visual upkeep on what's been done. So as you can see, these are the sites that have already been completed, and these are the numbers of cameras in each area. Again, Lansdowne, Vineham Walk, Eccleston. And these are the sites that we've identified working with yourselves as our priority ones. I might go through these a bit too quickly, but these are minuted and ready for you to review. And then we've identified our priority 2 sites. What we are aware of is that things may change. You know, something that's a priority today or not an issue one day can become an issue. So we are aware of that. We're not fixed, and we will take on the views of our residents. And then we've identified our priority 3 sites. Okay, and that's the end of this presentation. So I'm going to stop sharing so that I can see hands. Okay,
thanks very much, Fiona. So I've got 4 hands waiting. Firstly, I've got Councillor Eddy, then I've got Philip, Sibusiso and Nigel. So Councillor Eddy.
Fiona, firstly, thank you for your presentation, which was very positive and good news. I appreciate most of the programme is focusing, or perhaps all, on permanent CCT coverage. Can you tell me, is there any provision in this programme or another for mobile cameras, which could be of real use to housing services?
So we haven't set aside any provision for mobile cameras, Councillor Eddy. But what I would say is mobile cameras are something I'm quite used to having used in the past, and nowadays often low cost as well. So it is something we can take away, we can consider. Obviously, what that would be is that, so as you probably know, mobile cameras are something that we would put up ourselves temporarily, where there is a hotspot, and then you take it away, and we would try and look at the evidence that's been collated, separate to our, the operation centre that are able to monitor our cameras, which is what we have. But it's definitely something I can take away, because it is my experiences that I've used it before, and it's often proved very, very valuable, especially in separate areas. We do find that residents using Ring doorbells has also proved incredibly valuable. So that's something else I will say.
Okay, thank you very much, Fiona. And so Councillor Reynard has agreed with that in terms of taking away. So Philip and then Sibusiso.
Hello, Fiona. I was in Barton Hill when I was on the Community at Heart board when we installed CCTV. Couple of questions. First of all, what happened to the digital system that was on the side of Ashmead pointing at John Cousins, where the control centre was? When you moved John Cousins, what happened to all the equipment, which was very expensive at the time? And the second point is that the one thing we found, that the street lighting, what's it called, something oxide lighting, is no good. It cannot differentiate between blue, red and yellow. So the Community at Heart funded white street lights all over Barton Hill, which improved the security of those CCTV cameras immensely. So much that Ashmead House, which we used to call Ashcart because it was full of rubbish, has now become your priority too. And I have people who still live in Ashmead House, I know regularly, and they say it's a wonderful place to live now, because A, the yobs have grown up, but also the cameras and the lighting has improved everything. When I lived there in 2001 to 2020, until the Community Art put in the lighting, no one went out in the street after 4:30. They demolished the shops on Avonvale Road because it was such a nightmare. But I just think what you're doing is wonderful. I really do think it's good, and it's rare I say that, but I think you're doing a good job. Could be better, but let's accept what we're getting is good. Thank you.
Philip, I shall take that as a very positive message, because we can all do better, can't we? And quite interesting when you talk about community at heart, because I wasn't working for Bristol then, as you know, and I wasn't even working my last place, but we may have known each other because I was working for a very small housing association, which was Solon, and we were working with you on the community at heart programme. So I do know of it. So I can't comment on what we've done with it because I actually don't know, if I'm honest.
Solon wouldn't have CCTV on their new houses in Barton Hill.
Yes.
Okay. So we'll take that as a positive endorsement. So I've got Sibusiso next, then Nigel.
I'm so sorry. 1 second. This is the joy of working at home. Somebody's just rang my doorbell and I'm the only person in the house. So give me 1 second. I'm so sorry.
Okay, let's talk amongst ourselves.
Alex, can I ask a question? Can I email you a question? Can I email you? Is it alex.marsh@bristol?
It is alex.marsh@bristol.ac.uk. Yes.
Thank you. I will
don't put Alexander, because then it'll go to somebody in experimental psychology. It'll go to somebody in experimental psychology then.
We could do with them.
I'm back.
Okay, so Sibusiso next.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you very much for the update, Fiona. I just wanted to say I was with the residents at Yemen House in Redcliffe, just to meet another group that's really got a community forum going, and to hear what their concerns are compared to some of the things that we had learned to this side. And it was quite inspiring, really. And one of the things that they were talking about was the application towards CCTV. So it's great that it's on the list. But I wanted to see. Oh, sorry, working from home.
No worries.
Hello.
Yeah, just wanted to see how, then the potential of joining things up, because sometimes forums, if they are not informed or the local councillors are attending and so forth, then they could be a bit more informed. But if they are not informed, then they're disenfranchised from access to information. Yeah. So I think some of the topics that we're talking about today really help with what resident forums could be doing if they have all the information. So CCTV cameras always comes up, and it's great that you've got this list, and hopefully those that have got resident forums can really, support what you are doing, because then they get to know and share that information in time, because then you've got a lot of frustration if not. Secondly, is about the bike storage and mobility scooters. We got small units, homes, but expensive bikes. But if there isn't any storage facilities, it's hard for us to keep storages where we see that there isn't good investment on them. We might as well keep them in our house or cycle them in the block. I know it could be irritating, but that's what people are doing. So the CCTV, again, supports people with that support that their things may not be stolen because the CCTV is there. So it's that additional reassurance. And I think it's such an important one. Thirdly, it's the parks. Right, you've got that 73. I know it's in the agenda. 73,000 that's been spent in some residents about uplifting their communal spaces or doing community gardens. All of those things is actually a package. What I'm seeing and what I'm hearing today is a package of support for residents. So as much as you've got the communal space updates and the kitchen updates, I think some sort of visual representation. So you're not just sending a flyer about cameras. That may not necessarily be interesting. Or about damp. It may not necessarily be interesting. But when you show a holistic view, it catches people's attention and interest. So there's so much that you've kind of put in this agenda that it really makes a package of support for local residents. Because everything you've got here today, I was so pleased, because whilst they were in the forum, I was like, this is what we're going to be talking about. Everything you've said here today, I'm going to be able to come back with a feedback for you guys about what you're doing. But they've been doing that forum for the last 3 years, you know, missing information, right? And some of the things that we've done in our block, we did without access to that renovation grant or whatever parks. We've been doing our own garden. We've updated the communal spaces without any of the external funding. But, you know, just by working together with the council. So I think in terms of making the council blocks safer, a beautiful space to live in, it's actually by collaborating. And finally, there's a lot of changes going on in Redcliffe. They're not really aware of, you know, the Temple Meads changes, but also they've got a basketball court. So I'd really like to see, like when you mentioned about the safer community, safer area fund, the projects that are delivered, because within some of the blocks, children, you know, some of the parents are saying the children don't want to go to a park that's further down the road. They want to play right where they are. So how can some of those grants actually support those residents with creating activities where they are to support the children where they are? Clearly, it looks like some people don't want to go, you know, 30 minutes out from their block. So sometimes it's actually keeping activities within so that people know that there is resources, there is activities, and that's the way that they're keeping the block safe without children having to go to parks and so forth. So yes, brilliant stuff. Let's just put it together for residents to have a simpler picture of what they can actually access.
Thank you for that. And another endorsement for the issue of communication being important, which takes us, I got Nigel next and then Pete.
Just two things. Firstly, if a block isn't on the list of these 3 priorities lists, and ours isn't, because we haven't had an intrusion for a number of years now, can I assume that we're not going to get any upgrade in the CCTV? Anyway, we've got an entry phone system, which we've been asking for 15 years to be recordable. It's got an old-fashioned tape recorder. So can I assume that we're not going to get that because we're not on the list? The second point is you mentioned cabling. Is there a Wi-Fi solution? I don't understand nowadays where I have to put cables in where an awful lot is done, you know, through Wi-Fi, which is saving up hassle.
So yeah, I won't profess to be a technical expert. Probably not the best person for that, Nigel. But I don't think it's. I think it's a bigger issue than simply just Wi-Fi. I think there is a Wi-Fi connection, but I think the cabling is to enable that all to happen and for us to have the link in from the operations centre. So I can't talk to you about the detail of what that's about, but we do need to do the cabling for it. In terms of your particular site, if it's not identified as one of the core 3, those are our priorities, and obviously we've had to sort of identify what are the priorities and where they exist. I think the fact that you've said that you've had no intruders, your site's very safe, is probably one of the reasons that indicates that we probably got that about right if you're not down on the list. But that doesn't mean to say that you won't be there over time, because I think this isn't something that we're going to do and never do again. You know, it's not the 2 years and then that's the end of it. I don't think Tom would be happy with that, because he does push us to keep improvement. So, you know, this is about adopting and new ways of working, because we probably should have been doing this a long time ago and we wouldn't have a big problem that we've got now. So this is about, we'll be on a journey. So I expect things that are not down as a 1, 2 or 3 will come up the list over time as we've dealt with the priorities, if that answers that. Is that okay?
Yeah, this was raised as an issue by tenants in 2010, what was then the forum for tenant participation. So it's been a long time coming.
Yeah, no, I understand.
So many other things have been raised and ignored. Never mind.
Right. Thanks for that, Nigel. Pete.
Thank you, Professor Marsh. Thank you, Fiona. It's really good to see some of the issues that were raised previously by the Estate Management Board post COVID being reflected in the funding allocation and the decisions of where priorities should be. very good to see that, and I know this is in response to previous tenant feedback. It's welcomed, it's appreciated. There is, however, a cynical part of me. Philip was talking about community at heart, Barton Hill, the experience of changes in lighting. Home Office Research Study 78, of course, says that if you want to reduce antisocial behaviour, you improve street lighting. That comes from the general fund, not the housing revenue account. If we want to reduce crime, that comes from the police, not the housing revenue account. There is a part of me that fears we're just cost shunting. Our rent is being used to pay for problems that the general fund and the policing precept should be taking from the council tax. And I'm saying that with councillors present because I want local government reporter to pick it up. Equally, there is also a risk when we're talking about cabling inside blocks of flats that we're going a little bit dystopian Black Mirror and going down the Blackview route of facial recognition software and all the other Black Mirror terrors of IT and residents' home. There is a line between privacy and residential space and the corporate intrusion for antisocial behaviour that I'm mindful of. I'm not saying we're getting it wrong, but I'm thinking there are going to be residents who look at properties and go, I don't want to move into a block in which I'm on camera every staircase and every floor that I'm going, and I can't get to my front door without being judged by a control room operator. It's a divisive, it's a difficult judgment to make. I'm not saying we're getting it wrong per se, but I'm saying we're edging into territory that is very Black Mirror. It's very much the Orwellian nightmare of citizen schools used in China, where we've seen tower blocks literally locked in and welded shut during COVID. And I worry about the UK having more CCTV cameras per metre than every other state on the planet. That's
okay, so
reflection.
Okay, so I'll just respond to some of that. So in relation to the kind of wider issue around CCTV, that is general funded, not HRA funded. There is a programme of works, and that is why the operations team deal with that. So they work with us, but they're also working across the local authority for those other areas that are general funded, and there's a programme of work, and they'll be reporting to various boards on their work. So that's ongoing as well and separate. So we're only looking at our sites. And what I would say is I acknowledge your concern around, there is always a balance, isn't there, Peter, around how much security that we have in our sites. We're very careful around understanding where the cameras are facing, that are not facing anyone's personal front doors and particular areas like that, so as not to breach any regulations and privacy issues. However, we do have issues with, and it's different in various areas, with street vagrants, tailgating residents, and women and children being scared when they're trying to come home at night because people are sleeping in corridors and any warm space, and using those areas to use drugs, and it also gives us an ability for those drug users for us to understand their safety. So it's not just about the safety of the individuals who live in our blocks, but also the safety of those individuals who are vulnerable for various reasons, and it gives us an ability to act. What we don't do is spend, the cameras are personed 24/7, not just staring at our cameras, but we will, and we often are asked to use the data, the evidence that we are able to collate from those cameras to support some really scary crimes that have taken place and that our residents are affected from. I think if we were to speak to residents about what it provides, the vast majority would say for them it provides that reassurance, that safety. But I do think there's always that balance, and we are always conscious of the need to strike the correct balance. It's within our thoughts all the time, responding to residents, understanding legally what we're allowed to do, and I'm sure you can appreciate that. The last thing that I would say is this has been a really interesting conversation, and thank you so much for everyone's feedback. I'm not here to kind of to big up Tom Reynard, but I will say that he has put a lot of pressure on me around CCTV, around gardens, around all of those things. And what it does tell me is that obviously it's the things that are important to residents. So I shan't moan at him when he tells me that he wants work done. So it's really positive to get the positive feedback from everyone around the virtual table today. And for me, as an officer, it's kind of given me extra vigour to try and continue this work and push this through. So thanks for your positive feedback, everyone.
Thank you, Fiona. That's great. So I am, as is my role, conscious of time. We've got 25 minutes to do, and we've got 2 substantive items still to cover. So if we don't mind, I think we should move on at that point and say our next item is energy efficiency. Sam Robinson has joined us. Sam, just, in case you're unaware, everybody will have seen a copy of your slides. So if you want to highlight some key points from that and take questions, then that would be great. Over to you.
Yeah, thank you. There's not many slides, so I'll run through them quite quickly and leave a bit of time for questions if that's all right. Can you see my screen?
We can.
And apologies to, I think, some of our residents, definitely Nigel, Philip, I think Tim as well, have sat through these at least once, maybe more than once in the last couple of weeks. So
you're not on number one,
for your patience sitting through them again. We've had lots of engagement recently. So yeah, I'll whiz through the slides and then I'll take questions at the end. So just in terms, I'll talk a little bit about where we've been, pause a little to sort of give you an update on where we are now in terms of energy efficiency, talk a little bit about what we've got coming up and future plans. So in terms of retrofit, we've spent about 52 million on retrofitting in the last 7 years. That's around 8,000 homes with upgrades to heating systems. A lot of that is sort of older gas boilers to condensing boilers and air source heat pumps in some cases. Around 800 to 1,000 flats in blocks have had EWI go on. Around 1,500 new roofs and 3,500 double glazing replacements, as well as 45 properties rather with cavity walls filled. And so, as we'll see in a minute when we get into some of the numbers, that's sort of a lot of that. Those more straightforward measures were in the latter stages of those programmes. So things like double glazing, cavity wall insulation, loft insulation to a certain extent, largely done now. So just as a side by side to see. Over the last 20 years, we've gone with glazing from 28% up to 99% of homes. Similarly, boilers less than 1% to over 95% of homes on gas, central heating with condensing boilers. And like I talked about, cavity wall insulation at 99% of homes with cavity walls, the cavities are filled now. Lofts, not quite where we'd want to be, so still 10% of homes with lofts not got the loft insulation where we want to be, and we're taking a real data-led approach to get to those remaining homes at the moment and make sure we get to where we need to be. So where that kind of leaves us, like I said, double glazing, loft insulation, cavity wall insulation, lots of that done, but still, as you can see from the pie chart, around 3/4 of our homes have reached that EPC standard that we've made a corporate commitment for all our homes to reach by 2030. Around 7,400 homes, so around a quarter of the stock still not at that standard. So the challenge now from now out to 2030 is that remaining chunk of largely harder to treat properties. And just sort of zooming in on those homes, those harder to treat properties, and what we've got, that's around 1,900 flats in blocks, including high-rise blocks with no external cladding. I think we've got around 25 to 30 blocks of flats which have no cladding at all on at the moment. So those will obviously be a big priority. Around 600 easy forms, so sort of system-built post-war properties, and in fact a few hundred more of those types that were put up very quickly after the war. 850 to 900 acquired properties, so lots of different types there, but largely Victorian terraces and end terraces, as well as around sort of 3,000 traditional 2 and 3 bed terraces, semis that you see all over the city. So in terms of what next, like I said just now, the targets for all of those homes to reach a minimum of EPCC by 2030, and we've identified funding in our business plan to achieve that. As well as spending that money on improvements, we can obviously use it to bring in external grant funding so we can do more. So with that in mind, we've got £26 million of major works going on at the moment to 12 blocks of flats and around 100 easy form flats. And as part of that, we were successful in bidding for 9 million from the Social Housing Decarbonisation Fund. And so the balance of those projects will be HRA funded. Beyond that, so beyond the next 2 years, lots of work to plan more major programs of work across the rest of the decade. Our big priority is fabric first, like I talked about. So you know, where have we got flats and houses that aren't insulated at the moment, because we're really conscious that they need to be. But obviously could include things like solar panels and other measures as well, and that's as well as that rolling program of, you know, remaining lofts, cavity walls, replacing roofs on life cycles, similar for double glazing. So we'll see us bring forward that major program of insulation, which will run over the rest of this decade, and that will be delivered in partnership with Bristol City Leap, and that will largely target those solid wall properties, which includes the flats I talked about, which includes the acquired properties, the Victorian properties, but also a lot of those system built properties which might have a narrow cavity wall but maybe not enough to insulate it sufficiently, so might also need external wall insulation as well. Obviously that brings down energy bills, so it helps meet that commitment for EPCC, but it also drives other savings. It means people's heating systems can run at lower temperatures, so things like where you have a combi boiler, you could maybe turn down the flow temperature, so that obviously drives further bill savings, and also can pave the way for that transition to low carbon heating in the future when that comes. Similarly with solar panels, again in the One City strategy, big corporate priority to maximise solar generation across the city, you know, not just across our homes but across the city. Again, that will help reduce people's electricity bills, improve those EPC scores by lowering the amount of energy you have to purchase from your supplier. And again, we can be data driven and aim to, you know, maximise grant funding opportunities to bring in additional revenue to meet those costs where we can. And similarly, I guess this is slightly less immediate, but definitely worth putting on the radar that, you know, in the longer term, we'll start to see that shift away from gas heating to lower carbon alternatives. So that's things like district heating, that's things like heat pumps. Those energy efficiency measures I've been talking about, like insulation, like solar, will be the things that get homes ready to make that transition. Obviously, we've got a balance to strike as a landlord, where we need to prioritise those green objectives alongside things like tenants' bills and alongside thermal comfort. So really important that we get our buildings in the right shape for that transition. And obviously our priority will be always to make sure that homes are heated sufficiently and that bills are kept as low as possible whilst we make that transition. So that was short and sweet. I'll just pause for questions now. I can see a couple of hands up.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. I'm sure that. Thank you, Sam. I'm sure there will be questions. So I've got Nigel first, and I got Councillor Eddy, and then I got Councillor Denyer. Nigel.
Yeah, a number of points which I've raised already with you. Firstly, I don't see a reference to storage heaters and immersion heaters in your paper. There are loads of flats, including mine, who got these. They're incredibly expensive and inefficient, so much so that a lot of people in our block don't have the immersion heaters on. So they're effectively without hot water unless they boil it in a kettle. There needs to be a programme of replacement of these old storage heaters, over 50, 60-year-old storage heaters and immersion heaters with efficient hot water and heating systems. The second thing is a question of solar panels. We're having a new roof put on Gilton House. I've raised this before with you. It seemed like a good opportunity to put solar panels on, but it's an opportunity that's been missed while the scaffolding's up. Thirdly, and this is important, is to do with the renovation of blocks, the removal of the fire safety programme of removing flammable cladding off blocks. What's happened in our block is that the flammable cladding's been removed, but there's now going to be a huge gap between that removal and its replacement with new fireproof insulation. So much so that even in the summer, the flats are cold, and we face now with a really cold winter and huge heating bills. Now, the point I'm trying to make is in the planning of this fire improvement programme across, I think it's over 30 blocks in Bristol, it needs to be planned and managed. So the removal of one set of insulation, there's an immediate replacement with the new lot rather than a long wait, particularly over winter, because that is going to cause a huge problem. It seems that our programme is way behind schedule. It's supposed to finish in December, but I can't see that happening. And the final point, which again has been raised with you, is a question of district heating systems. To what extent, it's used a lot in other towns. My hometown, Nottingham, it was used in the 1970s. To what extent is the council looking at or planning the construction of district heating systems in new housing developments that may be going ahead?
Thank you, Nigel. Sam, do you want to come back on those points very briefly?
Yeah, I will. Although the district heating in new builds, I might have to take away and come back to you on. I could talk a little bit about our thinking in terms of existing properties, but I'll take them in order if that's all right. So let's do the storage heaters first. So, I mean, first point debate, I completely agree, and it is something we're going to look at. There is a programme, and I know Philip raised it last time, of replacing older storage heaters with new quantum storage heaters. But again, we know that some people have got concerns around those. And they're not a silver bullet. We know electricity is much more expensive than gas. We know we don't have gas in high-rise blocks. So to a certain extent, it's a problem to which there's no quick fix. We absolutely need to review what's the right heating solution in those blocks of direct electric heaters. And to that end, is it something we can use solar panels to supplement? Because in a world where electricity is probably about to change under the new price cap to 4 times the price of gas, you are going to, the bills are going to be higher. We know that. Longer term, I think we need to look at a review of the right solution. My sense is it's always likely to be something electric, because the prospect of retrofitting, we know we can't. So we need to move to communal gas would be the first point, because we can't put individual gas for safety reasons in those flats, like in Gilton House. And so I can't rule it out, but a huge challenge to retrofit wet central heating systems like communal gas or heat networks into old blocks like that. So that puts in a space where we need to view the different electric options available in the round for all 2,900 flats that have direct electric storage heaters at the moment, and look at what the best solution is. But beyond saying you're right, it's a problem. It's a problem for hot water immersion, and it's a problem for heating. I don't have a really good answer for you now, but it is something we're going to look at. So that, I think, just to add to that on solar, we've historically had an issue with putting solar arrays on block roofs because everyone's individually metered. So the technology hasn't historically existed to, if you like, spread that benefit out across all however many flats in the blocks and make a sort of proportionate bill reduction for each resident. There are products coming onto the market now which allow that sort of thing, so it's certainly something we should explore, as well as looking at other options for using solar panels on roofs, and if there are ways to, for example, limit communal electricity charges and reflect that in service charges for residents and things like that. But obviously the ideal would be deriving a benefit directly for the people living in the block in terms of their electricity bills. So that should be our lead option, and I think that goes hand in hand with the question around electric heating for blocks with night storage heaters. The cladding removal, it would be better if there was someone from the delivery teams, and I don't think we've got anyone on the call to answer that. I'm glad it's a decision that I don't have to make, because you've got the balance of getting the cladding off as quickly as you can, because it's acknowledged that it's not safe, versus leaving people with, particularly in the heating season, particularly where you've got night storage heaters, facing the winter of high bills. I think it's something for HSLT to look at potentially separately and come back with an answer, though, because I'm conscious that I can't really answer, and there's no good answer on it. It's a case of, the least worst option there, isn't it?
Well, it's effective project management. I mean, I'm not addressing it to you, I'm addressing it to councils and officers on the thing. I mean, this planning issue needs to be much more effectively managed, and not just left to the contractors who are beginning to lose faith in it.
So Sam, yes, we'll take. Well, I think maybe we'll take that point, and you can't answer it, so we're not expecting you to, but we'll hold on to it, and maybe. And I know Nigel's raised it previously, so we need to maybe get a fuller answer outside the meeting, probably. So.
Okay. It was just on district heating really quickly. The new build we'll need to come back to. We know where the heat network is and is going to be, and there are certainly blocks that are more likely to be connected because they have certain characteristics. They're insulated, they have communal gas heating already. There's more work we would need to do, because as you'll probably be aware, certainly, and I don't know if this is the case in Nottingham, but like low carbon district heating networks which run at lower temperatures, like the one that we will see in Bristol, in the same way that heat pumps work, they're very efficient, but the flow and return temperature, so the temperature the water runs around the network at, is lower. And so you need to make sure that the insulation is correct in the block, that your radiators are correctly sized, so there is infrastructural stuff that we need to do to blocks to make sure they're ready for that transition when it comes. And so again, that comes back to that point around making sure people are warm enough, keeping bills low, but balancing that with the real objectives to decarbonise heat. So it's sort of part of that challenge I touched on in the slides.
Thank you. I'm going to suggest we take some questions, several at a time this time, so at least we capture them and they're on the table, if you like. Just conscious of time. So Councillor Eddy first, then Councillor Denyer.
Sam, thank you for your presentation. Obviously, I know something of your stock selection priorities, but in the interest of clarity, could you just tell the board what were your priorities on selecting properties?
Thank you. That's great. Councillor Denyer, and then Pete.
Sorry, the mouse always freezes when you're trying to unmute, doesn't it? Thank you, Sam. That was really interesting. In your slides, you said that 8,000 homes have been given improved heating system, brackets, gas boilers to condensing and heat pumps. Could you tell us what proportion of the new systems are heat pumps? I'm guessing it's a pretty small percentage right now, but it would be good to know. And then a few slides later on the bit about insulation, you've said it means heating systems can run at lower temperatures, driving further bill savings and paving the way for low carbon heating in the future. Given that the dates on that slide are already talking about 2030, I infer that you mean that the low carbon heating systems are going to be coming later than 2030, which has been my fear for a while, but I don't think we've seen actual timelines for Heat Network, and I don't know certainly timelines for if there's going to be any heat pumps on council housing. So I wonder if you could tell us if you know anything about the timeline for that. And I'm saying that in the context that the Mayor committed that all Bristol City Council emissions will be zero by 2025 and the whole cities by 2030. So if we're saying post 2030 before we get low carbon heating, that's a concern.
Okay, thank you. So Sam, hold on to that one. So Pete and then Philip, and then Sam, I'll invite you to respond.
So thank you, Sam, for the presentation. On the point about new build and low carbon, Castle Park View, 27-storey newest tower block right next to Castle Park, powered by the district heat system and a heat pump taking water out of the river right by Castle Park. Brilliant example. Using actually very similar technology that we used by Ovarup in 1991 at Cannon's House, the Lloyd's head office, which is now currently for sale. Decades before photovoltaic electricity was invented, water was sucked in from the docks, heat exchange units took the hot air the accountants made and pushed it through a steam generator in the basement, so the building had a net electricity surplus in the summer. Two very good projects. I wish we could see more. I guess my question arises from what we've done in the past. Bristol Green Capital Partnership, our European Green Capital, initiated the Save with Solar project. 10 or 20 council tenants' homes were using technology that rivaled the Tesla batteries, so that if they were on district substations that couldn't take a feed-in tariff, they could generate solar photovoltaic, they could store it in the battery, they could use it in their home without overloading the national grid.
Pete, I'm so sorry to interrupt. Is it just me, or is he quite muffled? I'm seeing a few other strained faces, so I think you're a bit muffled.
Sorry, it is raining here, so you're probably getting quite a lot of interference. My question is, what are we doing about Save with Solar? We've trialled, we've proven the technology. We were promised as council tenants. My home's energy performance certificate says the next step to take is to put a solar photovoltaic roof on it. What is happening to those properties? We've got the solar map of the city. We know which ones have 100% solar generation potential. My bungalow is one of them. Where are we taking that forward? Is that going to be through City Leap? Is that going to be through the asset management of the housing revenue account when it replaces boilers? Is it something coming from national government? Because the cost of replacing the gas boilers and hitting the 2030 target exceeds every bit of the housing revenue account between now and 2030. So I'm wondering where we're joining that up with our 2030 ambition, our previous experiment with the technology during Bristol Green Capital Green Partnership, during the European Green Capital year, and how we're moving forward, say, with solar, because cost of living is absolutely crippling me as a disabled person. Let's not forget, since Gideon Osborne, the 60% real-term reduction to disabled people's incomes, and cost of living and energy is crucial to council tenants right now. So we are looking to you for solutions. Can you provide them?
I've got Philip and Donald, so just we need to think of it. So Sam, do you want to come? There's quite a lot there. Do you want to quickly respond to those comments?
Yeah, I did my best to get as much of that down as I could, Peter, but just I might not be able to answer your question as fully as I'd like. Councillor Eddie, stock selection. Yeah, so energy performance, we've got really rich data on the energy performance of our stock. So it's a worst first approach. So we're like when I talked about solid wall, we're looking at the homes that essentially score lowest in what's called the SAP framework, so that generate the lowest EPC scores in line with that corporate commitment. Councillor Denyer, 511 heat pumps, I think, is the answer to your first question. On your second question, no, that's not what I meant. I think it's just the slide was set out incorrectly. I was just trying to make a broader point that, you know, we have an interest to balance, so getting the fabric of a building is important before you transition to low carbon heat, but I wasn't putting any dates on anything. And obviously we've got City Leap on board now to, you know, accelerate rollout across the board, so that will help. Solar, I think it's a really important point. It comes up in every meeting, and it's top of, in terms of energy efficiency, I say it's top of residents' agenda. It's something we're working with Councillor Renard on a lot at the moment, because it's a big priority for him at the moment. I think what we hope to bring forward is a clearer strategy that towards the back end of this year or early next year, which will set out, like with anything, like with insulation, whilst we recognise it's important to have a framework that sits behind anything to understand, you know, how we prioritise solar with roof replacement cycles, with wiring replacement cycles, as well as, you know, how do we prioritise people with lower EPC scores, for example. So there's lots that needs to go into the mix to get you from a ambition to a delivery plan, and that's where we need to go next, I think.
Okay, thank you. I'm very conscious we've got, so just in terms of time, we've got another. Alicia, should we hold over your item until next time around? Do you think would that be the best route? I'm very conscious that we're nearly at our time. Would that be? Is there something crucial, time critical, that we need to pick up from your report?
Not particularly. Okay. I'm quite happy for members to read the report and email me if they want any further information or have questions around tenant satisfaction and figures, and I'll do my best to answer it outside of the meeting. So I'm quite happy, unless someone's got a burning question about what's in that report, I'm quite happy for it to be.
Sorry, we've had a bit of a packed agenda today. In which case, if I'll take Philip and Donald, and then we'll draw the meeting to a close. Philip and Donald. Philip, you're on mute.
Yeah. I don't know whether the gentleman in the blue shirt, I can't see his name because
Sam. He's gone. Donald, do you want to jump in while?
Oh no, all I was just going to briefly say what Sam has just said, that we have entered into a formal partnership with City Leap to accelerate and drive forward our programme. So Peter, City Leap is our provider, and we'll be working closely with them to roll out energy efficiency programme.
Okay, that's great.
I don't know what happened there.
Okay.
And I lost everyone.
You're back in.
Just to quote, to emphasise what Councillor Dyer said, was it? Every time Peter speaks, it's so muffled, I didn't know I was deaf until I listened to him. He needs to take them earphones off or go indoors where we have got no extra sounds, you know what I mean? But what I was going to say is, I don't know whether Sam is aware of St. Catherine's Court. It's a supported housing scheme close to where I live here. They've had heat pumps for nearly 20 years because it was built as a private development, and then the builder went broke and Bristol City Council took it on. Two of their residents came to a for the first time to residents meeting last week, which I hold every month in Northfield House, and they're ecstatic about it. It's wonderful. Go and look at St. Catherine's Court. Every flat on the outside wall, admittedly they're all bungalows except for 10, have a heat pump out on the outside wall, and it works. Marvelous. You don't need any consultation or any surveyors. Go and look at it. It works. And
Okay.
as I've said many times to Sam, we need solar panels on the Maudley house where I live. Is a long block of flats. You could easily put solar panels on there for the communal lighting. If nothing else, we've got 74 light bulbs blazing night and day because we've got internal corridors and internal stairwells, and the lift is on 24 hours a day. What's that costing the council? That must be across this city. The council must be spending millions on electricity.
Okay, so St Catherine's Court plus a re-endorsement of the point about solar. I think we'll take that as a comment.
Done.
Fiona, do you want to come in on this point? And then I think we should draw ourselves to a
Well,
close.
I didn't want to come in on this point, but I would just wanted to. Philip had asked about MFT, and I just wanted to give a quick update because I had committed to do so, so I didn't want to miss that.
Well, let's move into any other business and start us off.
Okay. All right.
Carry on.
Oh, right. So I'll do it. So, okay. So Philip, so you asked around an update of where we were with moving forward together. And what I wanted to say is that I think the moving forward together way of working was, as you know, a co-design, a co-creation with our residents. And it was about understanding priorities based on what our residents were telling us. So really listening, and also obtaining true feedback from officers throughout housing landlord services. So what we did is we used that information, as you know, to create a bit of a platform, a blueprint for change. Okay, and what we have to do is we need to be able to move those ideas into action. Otherwise, it remains just a piece of theory. And I think that's something that we, as officers, have fallen victim to all too often, as you know. So we have now moved that piece of work into action. And that becomes a bit of a BAU, you know, our business as usual approach for how we strive to set services up and how we strive to work and operate. So with that being said, there's been a number of changes that have been taking place within my own service. I can talk about my own service and in other services within landlords services. But for me, that's about one of the key themes that we took on board was being more visible for our residents and our leaseholders more generally. So that's about making sure that we've improved the percentage of tenancy audits, reviews when we're getting out and visiting our residents across our stock. It's about the neighbourhood and estate grading work, where we've graded estates to dictate the priority of our walkabouts. And that work did pause for a while because what we did is we did the initial work where we captured the grading of our estates, which dictated the frequency of the walkabout. But then what we needed to do is try and put in place improve the digital aspect to make it easier for officers to capture data and to report issues that were being presented by residents, stakeholders more widely. So that work is about to relaunch quite very shortly. Within the next 2 weeks, we're doing a piece of work. We're going back out to officers and they're going to start and pick up that work to be more visible, which was a key theme. We've done some extra work around the ASB action plan. That's a key theme for us. And that's come from directly from our residents' data, both in what we call our transactional feedback and our perception feedback. So there's feedback that residents who've directly been affected by ASB are telling us, and residents that we don't know if they've been affected by ASB, but we get feedback from them. We've used that information, that evidence base, to put together an action plan and a new way of working. So we're doing that with our ASB at the moment. We've listened to our leaseholders. Previously, we didn't have what we call just a duty service. So leaseholders were struggling to get hold of us in a timely manner. So we've now set up a leasehold duty service, which we already have in tenancy management. So really there's ongoing work, and that's where we've taken the MFTs. We've listened to the feedback that we got from MFT and used that to put those ideas into action. So that's kind of why it's not fallen off, because everything we do now is around that blueprint. So that's given us our direction of travel.
Thank you for
I
that.
hope that's useful.
Thanks, Fiona. That's really helpful. I mean, again, it may be that there's a communication piece to go alongside that, so that people feel that it has gone somewhere. You're clearly confident that it has. Does everybody else appreciate the fact that it's still moving? Yeah. But thank you for that. That's really helpful. Any other business that anybody would like to raise at this point? I've got Tim.
I would just like to ask the question about the leasehold. Apparently, they're difficult to get hold of at the moment. They're not answering their phone, they're not answering their email. So is there an issue that should be made, that people should be made aware of?
No, Tim, this is news to me. I mean, I know that we've gone through a transformation. So we've moved from having a leasehold service to a home ownership service. So that's looking at all the tenures, but that duty desk should be being personed. So if there are issues, what I will do is take this away, and I will speak directly to the manager for that service, to Julie, who is exceptionally, a great colleague. I'll speak to her and find out what's going on and make sure that service is up and running as it should be.
Okay. Even I've had a notification of the next SUG for leasehold, and you had to sort of tell them that you wanted to attend, and it went straight to a page that told you that they were having issues. And apparently, according to other people that I've listened to at other SUGs, this page is like a warning page that's been on there for months. So
okay,
they don't seem to understand what's going on.
So it sounds like there's something there to be inquired about, and Fiona said she'll take it away. So that sounds helpful.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Alicia, next.
Yeah, I just wanted to say in relation to the tenant satisfaction report, by the time the board next meets, all of the satisfaction survey figures will be available in the annual report to tenants, which is published on the 1st of October, is our key document where we share performance information with residents. So it's just giving you fair warning that we'll be some way further on by the time the board next meets. So, but I'm still happy to give a presentation or an update.
But then from the point of view of today's meeting, so your invitation to submit comments or queries
still stands.
Don't sit on them.
Because no, that's right. That still stands. I'm more than happy to
get them in soon if it will help you think about the final version of the report, I guess is the question. Is that point?
Absolutely.
Okay. And then I've got Pete next, and then Philip, I think.
So hopefully the sound has improved a little. I switched my hearing aids off because the word is always muted to me because I'm deaf. But I wonder if I could take the crisis opportunity approach and ask whether Donald and Sam could join up with a local economic partnership. As many of you know, I'm an economist. I'm a big fan of Kate Raworth's Donut Economics, where you take the output of one service as the input to another. In housing, historically, we've had Clorus heating, we've had district heating using gas or oil to heat tower blocks. We have large companies in the local economic partnership who have data centres and who have air conditioning in their offices who pump heat out. I wonder whether through the low carbon network being provided by CityLeap, we could join the two up. The LEP know where their data centre and their offices pumping heat out. Donald knows where our housing assets with Clorus heating system are, and the CityLeap can potentially lay a low carbon network between the two using a star and cluster model. The example I'll use is Devon, where a local data centre is heating the previously about to be closed swimming pool so successfully it made it economically viable to keep open. I wonder if a little bit of communication, maybe the West of England Combined Authority Mayor could be the conduit to do the introductions there. But I think using the one city approach and the Kate Raworth Donut Economic approach, whether we could join two services up. So the waste product of one is the energy input product of the other. I'll leave it as an idea. Thank you.
Okay, we'll take that as an observation, a comment, and something to reflect upon. Philip, I'll take you as your last. I think any other business, unless I've got any others. Philip.
Yeah. Chair, on Monday the 30th of May 2022, we had a marvellous meeting. It was on Zoom. On page 13 of that, Sarah Spicer stated that on the assisted gardens, the Bristol Waste was now a BCC Techcal company and could be directly appointed to no procurement delay, as they were willing to work with the local community group. Our housing officer told our local gardening group that BCC was no longer, Bristol Waste was no longer a BCC company, but was private again. Is this true? And if so, why wasn't the Housing Management Board informed?
Yeah, no, Bristol Waste remains a Bristol City Council company. There's been no change there.
Okay, right.
So by the housing officer, please, Donald.
Okay, so thank you. So people are gradually leaving. So we're over time. We need to finish. So I'll say
thank you very much, everyone.
So any other business there? That was helpful. Thank you all. Our next meeting is due to be the 4th of October. Enjoy your summer, and I'll see you all in the not too distant future. And don't forget, comments to Jeremy, Zoom or Teams. Let him know what you think if you've got strong opinions.
All right.
Bye bye.
Thanks, Alex. Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the presentations. Bye.
Thank you.